Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. As a quick reminder, I'm Haydon from Good Green Money. We're ethical IFAs. And I'm recording a great video here today with Louisiana Salge from EQ Investors. Thanks for joining me today, Louisiana. How are you?
Hi, yeah, so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, we'll get cracking with our conversation in a moment, but before we do, I'll just put things in context as I always do. So we're an ethical IFA firm, as I said. We always look for the best ethical ESG funds out there for our clients, and the videos that I've recorded today are precisely that. They're about the actual underlying funds that often clients will get invested in. Now, today's conversation is a little bit different, because EQ investors are investment managers and they're experts. One of the things they do is they build portfolios themselves. So think of them as a little bit of a middleman between Good Green Money and those funds. So often, if it's right for the right client, I'll pass the client on to say, hey, first of all, I do all the risk profiling and analysis of what a client's circumstances are, some retirement planning. From that, we identify an amount of money that needs investing or reinvesting, and I'll turn to somebody like EQ to pull that together. They're experts at doing this. They've been doing it for a long time. They focus solely, like Good Green Money, on investing to help people in the planet. They're a bunch of good eggs. They're a B Corporation, which I think is a really good thing to see, and it's something that Good Green Money are aspiring to become ourselves, and they've won lots of awards. So should be a good conversation today. Louisiana is the head of sustainability. So she's got a strong influence in the way that they undertake their investments. And one of the words that I see get used is that she's keen on the innovation side, innovating EQ's approach to sustainable investing. And innovating is important because the issues that are come to the fore are ever changing, and the considerations that you need to make sure these things are done right, they can't be left alone. It's ever evolving, so innovating is right. Anyway, I've been waffling on. Louisiana, do tell me more. Have I got my facts right about EQ, etc.?
Yes, you have. Let me kind of elaborate on a couple of things, and it's nice to talk to you and your clients today. I mean, so EQ Investors has been around for a while. We're kind of boutique investment manager, and all we do is sustainable investing. And you're totally right. We build sustainable portfolios consistent of different funds. But we do this slightly differently, and we kind of realize that every client has a sustainable preference that might differ from another one. We really want to cater for their sustainability preferences and deliver on that. And we've been doing it for 10 years, and really the space has changed dramatically. I mean, 10 years ago, there was a couple of ethical funds out there, and all they were doing really was kind of kicking out a couple of companies that were behaving somewhat badly or had ethical controversies. But what we're doing now increasingly is really focusing on the positive and the positive impact, and how can you use money, anybody's money, Mr. and Mrs. Smith on the streets money, in order to drive positive change and really, create a better world for all of us. So that's what I'm excited about, kind of mainstreaming sustainable investing. And you're right, I work to summarize my job, really, it's to make sure that our clients' sustainability preferences are met. And when we say we do something, we deliver on some sustainability objectives, we do so, and we can show you that we do.
Okay, that's really good. There's some extra useful information there, Louisiana. Well, perhaps tell me a little bit more on the day-to-day. What's the type of thing that you yourself get involved with to help push this through with your business?
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned that sustainability is ever changing and evolving, and I think to be able to really do this job properly, you need to really be on top of best practice. And that's what my job is. So what I'm doing is I meet with industry standard setters, I meet with asset managers across the industry, some of which you might have interviewed before, to really understand where is the innovation happening and what do I want all of our fund managers across the funds that we pick to do, and I push them on that. So that's the engagement side of things, making sure that they're constantly evolving and aligning to best practice. But in general, also, as a head of sustainability, I make sure that we can show our clients we do so. So I work on the reporting element as well. And that might sound a bit boring to some people, but it is so important because of the greenwashing element out there. A lot of funds are out there that claim something that they're not doing. And I'm so keen that we change this. And, I have the tools and the data and the information in place in order to show that our clients are actually getting what they think they're getting.
Yeah, I mean, you rather modestly, you say that reporting is the boring bit. I disagree completely. I think it's really important, and transparency is key. And when you are engaging with with the fund managers who in turn engage with the businesses they invest in, you're asking all those awkward questions. You're praising the things that are done well.
Yeah.
That's how you can have a secondhand impact on these things, which is
Indeed.
what a good green money client is looking for. So that's all great news. Let's drill down a little bit more. I know that there are 4 underrepresented areas in particular that you are pushing for, that you think should be on the sustainable agenda, the ESG, the ethical agenda more. And just to list what they are, so there's biodiversity, climate action, healthcare access, and digital inclusion. I don't know if you just want to run through each of those 4 briefly, and then I know that we're going to talk about 2 of them in detail, but let's perhaps dismiss. We're going to talk about biodiversity and healthcare, but sorry, digital inclusion. But before we do, just touch upon climate action, healthcare access. Why is it that you've pulled together these 4 themes in particular?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I mean, so in general, so the background to this is that our main job is to pick funds and create portfolios. So we're kind of shifting capital from one place to the next, allocating capital. But for us, that's not the best, that's not the only way to create positive change. And that's why we think engagement is so important. And even though we are not the first point of contact to the companies that inevitably the client's money goes into, we still see ourselves as having like a big systemic impact by being able to, promote best practice. So why have we picked these 4? I mean, there's a combination of things. We listen to our clients and their interests, and we integrate that every year into our strategic engagement plans. So some of them have been kind of co-developed almost with our clients, which is really nice. Then the second thing is that 2 of them, which is climate action and biodiversity, are actually very relevant across every company that we hold. And I'll kind of get back to this of why, biodiversity can be relevant to, I don't know, a healthcare business or something, but it is a systemic problem that we need to tackle. So that's one reason. And then the other 2, healthcare access and digital inclusion, is something that we think investors or sustainable investors have been not touching on enough. We think a lot of people are investing in a healthcare business with a great product, a great new drug, but they're not thinking about how can you make that accessible to the, to the average consumer, to developing markets. That's where the real impact is. Same with technology. You can have a great technology business, but if the access is bad, the positive impact isn't maximized. So a combination of these 2.
Oh, that's really powerful, and I think that's great. And yeah, no, it's great to see that you're doing this and evolving your thought process as we go. Yeah, let's drill down in a little bit more detail, as I said we would. So ESG is a term that's come to the fore in recent years: environmental, social, and governance issues, which is a common acronym that is used. E within that is environmental, and it's on most people's agenda. The impacts of climate change, etc., which you don't need to go into in great detail because the audience will be familiar with that as a concept and be concerned about it. But let's drill down into biodiversity in particular. I know you've got a really good example that or a couple of examples you can run through, etc. But let's hand the baton back to you. Tell me why biodiversity is such an important thing to bring to the fore.
Sure. So biodiversity is probably the next big challenge after climate change. They're very interlinked as well. But what we think is, so first of all, let's define it. What's biodiversity? It's the variety of living organisms on Earth. And what is happening with that? Well, we're experiencing a rapid decline in them. I looked it up just before this call, and it's honestly stifling. The International Union for Conservation of Nature, which is kind of compiles a list of species around the world, and looks at their level of endangeredness, and they look at over like 138,000 species, and of them 30% are near extinction. I mean, that is a lot. And you probably are familiar with the rhinos and the, the tigers and so on, but actually ecosystems are really interdependent. And if one species gets extinct, sometimes that can have a really big knock-on effect. All of this is very problematic, and I'm sure your clients or your audience is concerned about this. You're the type of client that we love to have. But how do we put that big issue in the context of an investor, right? I mean, that's a bit difficult because it is so systemic and interlinked. So let me share something quickly with you that might help bring this kind of more relation to your life. So the first thing here is, if that works, can you see that?
It's just coming up now. It should be there any second. Yep, we can.
Great. So I mean, this is just it's a bit of a cartoon here, but the idea is that we're really focusing on climate change, and that is really important. One of the big reasons why investors have been able to kind of value climate change is because we've got carbon as a proxy. So, a carbon emission of a business it's usually one number or a number divided by a couple of categories, but it is something measurable. And we've actually been able to measure it for quite a while, and it's probably the most disclosed metric, ESG metric out there. But that same thing isn't the case for biodiversity. It's a lot more interlinked. There's land impacts, there's impacts on deforestation, on water, and all of them are interlinked. So what we're needing to do in order to really grapple with this collapse that it potentially is coming our way is to improve investor interest in this, because investors can push companies, which are actually some of the biggest contributors to biodiversity loss, and I can go into that in a second. Investors can hold the key, really. They can encourage companies to look at their biodiversity impact, disclose more, and then we have more data to actually make decisions similar to climate change and the role they're playing. But let's look at how you can contextualize this into your own life. So everybody likes a cuppa. I do too. I'm actually not English, but still love it. In Germany, they do drink a lot of tea, actually. So I just wanted to show you how reliant a really simple thing in our day-to-day lives is on nature. And investors can break down nature and their relationship with nature in this exact same way. So they can look at environmental assets, which is basically the physical kind of area that they're dependent on, or their extraction is dependent on. And then the ecosystem services, which is the value derived from nature for humans. And these can be kind of physical things like timber, but they can also be processes like pollination. So that's the reason why we need to keep biodiversity intact in order to continue to derive these very valuable resources and processes from biodiversity. So let's go through it. Boiling the kettle. To make that kettle, need steel, aluminium, silver. I'm giving you an example of being extracted from Australia, and that is the case. This is what makes your kettle. And of course, there's water that goes in the kettle, otherwise you're in a difficult situation. Then we've got tea, right? Tea is being grown in India and China, depending on what you like, and that needs inputs, natural inputs. It needs healthy soil, it needs water, and of course it needs pollinators, because otherwise we do not have any plant reproduction. And all of these depend on not abstracting it unsustainably and maintaining a healthy ecosystem for those bees that are the pollinators. Milk. I'm saying, we've got some cows in the UK that make your milk. If you're into dairy, that might be debatable also. And that is dependent on the soil, on the water, on the feed input, on the cows, their land impact. We might need to deforest some land in order to have the cows graze. All of this has an impact. Your mug, porcelain being mined in China, and the impacts there on local biodiversity. And then I just said, some people don't like tea, they like a latte, but there you'd have impacts on Brazil and the rainforest deforestation there for increasing coffee plantations. So all of this just just highlights how dependent we are on nature on every single bit that we do in our day-to-day life. And this is what we want asset managers and investors to start thinking about.
Yeah, food for thought or drink for thought. That's
Yeah.
no, you're absolutely right. So yeah, that's a really good example to run through there, and does really highlight that yeah, it is systemic is the word used earlier, and it's completely agreed that that's
Yeah.
something that's key.
Exactly. And I think maybe, do you want me to talk about how EQ thinks about it then in the portfolio context, maybe?
Funnily enough, I was trying to frame a question around that, so you've done that better than me. That's exactly what I was trying to move on to. So yeah, no, do tell me that how your efforts are put to to helping with this issue.
Sure. So I mentioned earlier that it is something that investors are just starting to kind of think about. So it's our role in order to help investors share best practice across our buy list. And we approach biodiversity in kind of three ways. The first way is that we do so in our positive impact portfolios, which is one of our portfolio ranges, investing in solutions to unmet social environmental needs. What we do is we avoid companies that are involved with driving biodiversity destruction, and that includes animal farming, for example. It includes mining. It includes fossil fuel extraction and production. So that's the first point of call. We don't want to support those businesses that are making the situation worse. And then the second is that we invest in solutions to biodiversity problems. And I can give you maybe an example of two. One of them is a company called Autodesk. It's held in a couple of funds that we invest in. And it's actually a software business. It's a software business that looks at kind of building information modeling, and that's kind of a big jargony word, but it helps construction be smarter about how they build, where they build. And naturally, construction has a big biodiversity impact, of course, right? If you build on a site that previously hasn't been built on. And Autodesk is able to implement biodiversity data from things like satellite data, push that on top of the building and construction modeling. And therefore, construction companies can be really smart about where they build, what they don't want to build in, hotspots of biodiversity, and really maximize, I guess, the integrated building, especially of large projects. If you think about kind of a river, a bridge, that kind of thing, really working together with nature rather than against it. So that's a really nice example. And then we've got another one, which is a consumer brand. It's Hotel Chocolat. They make chocolates. We actually don't like to invest in unhealthy food and beverages in most of our portfolios, but this one is a bit of a different story. Actually, agriculture is really hard to invest in with a biodiversity lens on, because most big agricultural firms are doing monocultures and palm oil and so on, but they are doing a great job, and it's working really well because cacao plants actually thrive in kind of shaded areas. So what Hotel Chocolat is doing is they're paying farmers more in order to actually plant cacao beans in existing very established forests. And therefore, instead of cutting down that forest and planting cacao beans, they're actually helping maintain that forest cover and the local biodiversity. So we love both of those. And then the third thing, so I mentioned, we avoid the drivers of destruction. We invest in the solutions. The third thing is that we engage with our fund managers across the board in order to kind of improve data disclosure, get them to talk to their companies about it. And we used something called the Forest 500 list, and you can look it up. It's a list established by an organization called Global Canopy. It's an independent organization, and they basically list 500 companies that have supply chain impacts on biodiversity. And that includes everything from, technology businesses that have mining in their supply chain to agricultural companies. And even though we do, as I said, we do try to avoid the biggest destructors in supply chains, is inevitable. Everyone, as I said, right, with the T, it's just everywhere. So we looked at our exposure to those Forest 500 companies and included that in our engagement with 19 fund managers, of which about a third actually committed to what we'd like them to do. So, and we disclose that in our impact report. And I do encourage you to have a read if you're interested in more details on biodiversity and so on. That's it.
No, that's heaps and heaps of great information there. And yeah, no, I know you produce some very, very good impact reports, and they're always worth a read. Do you know what? That's some really useful insights there. I mean, I know of Autodesk as a very positive company, but to actually apply it in such a way to be empathetic to regions about the biodiversity, the biodiversity impact. I mean, that's a very encouraging sign. And yeah, as climate change occurs, one of the things that often gets mentioned is, coffee plantations are going to suffer, for yeah, perhaps not essential, but nevertheless, a lot of people would be distressed by this very fact. So this is some good stuff. And then Forest 500, the fact that you're just hiding one of the data inputs that you've got, and there's something you're picking up, and you'll have sources from all over. You're really making a sophisticated methodology behind what you do. So that's really good. Thank you for that. Okay, let's move on to this second area of the way you think things are underrepresented. Digital inclusion. Tell me more about digital inclusion, Louisiana.
Sure. So it's a bit of a buzzword. What it means is to increase access and not discriminate when you use technology. And I think this is important. Like, the world is getting more and more connected. We're using a lot more technology, but inequality is rising. And what we need to do is kind of bridge those two gaps and use technology in order to increase social cohesion, close education gaps, finance gaps, digital divides. And there's a big opportunity to do so, but our role is to not only invest in those companies that have these new innovative ways of connecting people or providing a technology that previously didn't exist, but to make sure that it's used in the right way, ethically, and is accessible to even minority groups, either socioeconomical or ethnic. So that's what we are focusing on. There's fantastic technology businesses out there, but we need to increase access. And I guess we think about it in the exact same way as I just mentioned about biodiversity, in that we avoid companies in the technology and digital space that are doing harm. We invest in solutions, and then we engage across the board in order to improve strategies. So that's the short version, and I can go into any more detail.
No, I think this is a critical area that you're picking up on. I mean, there's lots of the parts of the world that are in turmoil, as we all know.
Yeah.
And it's deeply understood that to create more of a level playing field, things such as promoting education and information flows, etc., is key to that, to promote a democratic world, which in turn should help people with their efforts in areas such as biodiversity. So the fact that you're focusing in on this is great. Have you got any particular case studies or examples that you can pick up with this one?
Sure, I can. So, I mean, on the avoiding harm, I think that's a bit more nuanced, because it doesn't really naturally map to just a whole sector exclusion, right? That's different from the biodiversity harm, where you can kick out the extraction and production of oil and gas, because that's, it's pretty clear cut there. Here it's a bit more nuanced. We aren't a big fan of the social medias, like the Facebooks, because they are using the technological platform in non-responsible way most of the time. This is debatable, but this is the EQ positive impact view. It also has impacts on mental health and so on that we worry about, and they're not taking properly seriously. They're also worrying about from a data privacy perspective. So these are some of the reasons what we look out for to avoid in technology businesses. And what we want to invest in are those that are almost using technology and linking that to one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, something that is needs investment, needs closing the gap on. And I'll mention two things. I'll mention one example from education and one from finance. So Chegg is a company that actually helps with kind of online access to learning materials and tutoring, support for testing preparation. And actually they work all the way from kind of school children to adult education. So they're kind of closing the gap of learning wherever it is, and it comes at a really good price point. And they've been expanding a lot in emerging markets, because that's where education, unfortunately, is really privatized. It's really odd, actually. The more you go into a developing nation, the harder it is to access tertiary education and so on, university and so on, because it's really expensive. If you look at kind of Mexico, Brazil, it's so expensive, versus, you know, in Germany it's free. So so that's where their impact is so great. So we love that. There's another company called Gentera. Go on.
They were called Check, did you say?
Check, CHEGG.
Ah, Check. Right. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Sorry. And your second example?
The second one is on financial inclusion, and I think it's really, I mean, people, for this company Gentera, it's a Mexican bank, but people are, I think, not aware that only 30% of women in Mexico have a basic savings account. And actually, like, that means that all of the benefits that you get from, you know, all your work that you do, planning, saving, I mean, really basic stuff, like being secure in preparation of, you know, securing your family's future, being prepared for times of stress, illness, any of the security is basically not provided. And just giving access to basic financial services, including microloans, is very empowering. So Gentera works to kind of bridge that gap. They're in Mexico, and as I said, there's a big gender divide and the access to finance there. So they give out microloans and really work with female entrepreneurs in order to bridge that gap. So we love them as well, and they use technology to reach under, I guess, rural regions that previously don't really have like a bank in their local shop, but they can have it on their mobile phone, because mobile phone access is actually better than financial access. And so they're using technology to reach people that are previously underserved. So we love both of those companies.
Oh no, they're really good examples. I mean, microloans is something that you do see come to the fore, and they do great things. Often cited in different African countries. So a Mexican example is good, and I'm really pleased to see that that's something that you're helping progress.
Great.
So I think we've covered a lot of ground here today, and I've got a really useful insight here into what you do, and I'm really glad that you know, we work with you. Before I close things off, is there anything in particular that we think we might have missed today?
Oh, I mean, there's lots that we do that we haven't talked about, but I think maybe just let's go back to maybe the reporting element and like greenwashing and so on. I mean, when I joined EQ, they were managing investments for probably 5 years, and all the funds that they were selecting were best in class at the moment, but impact reporting was basically non-existent. And it's something that we've been developing a lot since then, and we've been pushing our fund managers to do the same. Sustainability reporting, impact reporting, and depending on what sustainable objectives you set, you need to report on whether they're met or not. So that's something that I'm really proud of about EQ. We develop things that are personalizable to the end client. So Haydon, if you have a client that invests with us, we can provide personalized impact and carbon calculators that basically show them the associated impact with their specific investments, which we think is really nice because it makes it personal, and it is a nice way to kind of update them about what their money has been doing in the last year. So we like that, and I just wanted to highlight that as a nice thing that really connects people with their money. And hopefully, what my whole aim and our aim is to mainstream sustainable finance. I mean, this finance is so powerful, and if we change the way that it works, and help more clients access it that previously haven't. And I mean, Good Green Money is exactly what the type of partner that we need for this, because you do bring this up with your clients, and there's not enough doing this. So yeah, I'm just really happy to be here, and thanks for having the conversation with me today. And hopefully, yeah, it was of interest.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And no, thanks for highlighting those extra things that I touched upon earlier. You're very open with the data that you issue, some great looking reports, lots of really candid insights there. And the calculators I do refer to occasionally that on your website are spot on, so you can pump in some figures and it tells you the good that you're doing at the other end. So that's a nice, very visual way to relate to clients with that. Now, I think we're about there, Louisiana. So firstly, let me just thank you for your time today. Before I close things off, as I always say on these videos, anyone watching this is for information only. It is not advice. Do not do anything based upon what we've said here without taking professional advice. Come and talk to somebody at Good Green Money or any of the other decent ethical financial advisors out there, because although this is great what Louisiana and her team offer, it might not be right for you. So there's that. Also, if you haven't done so already, go on our YouTube channel and subscribe, and then you'll get updated with future updates. So there you go. And also there's small print at the end of this video, just to make sure to re-emphasize these things I've said. Anyway, I've been going on. Thanks again for your time, Louisiana. And no, it's been really useful. And yeah, see you again.
See you, everybody.